We appreciate that Tim Whetstone, member for Chaffey. You're a very busy man with a very serious situation in the Riverland. Thanks for joining us here on Flow to give us an update. How is the situation?
Yeah, hello, Ricky, and it's nice to be with you. Look, it's a very busy time, and it's a time that most people have anticipated for quite a few months, and that is that we're the recipients of all of that floodwater coming out of the eastern seaboard, and our catchments are now really serving us up a very, very torrid time with extremely high flows as well as increased river height. And what that is meaning is that we're all on high alert, trying to keep our communities safe and making sure that we do everything we can in preparedness to reduce the impact of what these high rivers will mean.
Now, leading into Wednesday morning, I think the State Emergency Service evacuated 6 people from Renmark Caravan Park. Now, is that a levy that was recently worked on that they decided wasn't up to it, or is it one that was checked after it had been put up for some time, some years, and they realised it wasn't quite up to scratch?
Well, Ricky, I'd like to clarify that if I could. It actually doesn't appear that it has been a breach of a levy.
Oh, yeah, there's no breach, I'm suggesting. I think they've decided there's a concern about the levy, haven't they?
No, well, actually what they've done is that they have concerns about water that is behind the levy. Reports to me is that we're seeing a bit of groundwater coming up with the hydraulic pressure from the very, very high rivers on the outside of the levee bank. And what that's doing is pushing up some of that groundwater into the caravan park. And I think, sadly, it appears that it might have been a bit of an overreach, but I'll leave that to the experts and making sure that we do receive the right advice and the right information so that the caravan park is not unfairly dealt with, but keeping in mind that we need to keep everyone safe and make sure our parks are a place for people to come up, relax and enjoy what is one of the historic river events that we've seen in the last 70 years.
And to clarify, and this is important among other things from a tourism point of view, that doesn't affect the rest of Renmark, it's just the Caravan Park area itself?
That's right. Yeah, they've had it was a state of emergency at the park, and so that park has been closed until it has the safety inspections carried out. But yeah, look, the Riverland is open for business. We've got other caravan parks that are open, they're safe, and they're welcoming visitors into our area. But, Ricky, I must say, the place is looking a picture. A lot of water around, but that really does give, everyone an opportunity to come up and just have a look how spectacular not only the river corridor is, but our floodplains and the environment is just at fever pitch with native wildlife. Shortly, we'll see a lot of yabbies to be caught. There'll be plenty of fish, but there is also a sight to behold when people are up around the Riverland having a bit of a look.
Was it positive for the community? You had the Prime Minister come and visit Renmark over the recent weekend. Was there good feeling in the community that they'd, even though it was a natural disaster, so to speak, situation, the Prime Minister at least came for a visit?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was good that he came up and had a look for himself to, just to better understand what the region is experiencing at the moment. And I would have liked to have hoped that he would have put a little bit more, assurance that people in the Riverland and surrounding communities, they will be catered for should we see hardship with these high flows and floodwaters coming our way. But look, it was great to have him in the region. It was great for him to have a bit of a look. The only downturn was that he had COVID, and he left the region, and I'm hoping he didn't leave too much with him.
Right. So when it comes to governments, federal and state, there's a whole range of support that is made available. Is there enough being made available, being done by the federal and state, not so much the emergency service agencies, but the governments themselves in terms of financial and other support?
Look, I think we've seen the initial $51 million that's been put on the table. I don't think it's anywhere near enough for the magnitude of what is heading our way. But look, to be fair, we will accept that. And I guess my job is to be a very strong advocate for the Riverland and neighbouring communities so that we are given, the relevant support and there is mechanisms put in place so that, if we do have a lot of power outages, that we need to address that. if we see people that are left homeless or are looking for emergency accommodation, we've got to make sure that those vulnerable people are looked after. And of course, our irrigators are living a life of uncertainty at the moment, particularly with power disconnections. And I think it was very, very important that we have all of the information before us so that we can make, those decisions. Do we put a diesel generator in? Are we expecting to have our power turned off? Because what we've seen to date is a lot of power disconnection without notice, and that is giving people severe anxiety. And, that is not the way that I think this region needs to be dealt with in these times of... It's I guess, an historic event that we don't want tarnished through some of those bad messaging and some of that communication that has been very, very poor over quite a long period of time now.
When it comes to connections, we know the Loxton to Berry Road, the Bookpinong Road, is out with water over it. But how are things faring, say, with the Paringa Bridge itself, and also, I guess, those major arterials into the area? All of those are expected to remain open?
Yes, well, as I understand it, the Paringa Bridge, that's a good old girl, that bridge. It just stands up to everything that's been thrown at it for a long period of time. I don't think there are any concerns there. But below the Paringa Causeway there, we're seeing obviously inundation. There's some road closures there. Obviously, all of the locks now are being topped by water. The Bookpinong Road has put quite a bit of inconvenience with that connection from Loxton to Berry and I guess the greater Riverland towns. And in some instances, that's putting an extra 2 hours on people's round trip. And that it is also having a significant impact on those people's cost of living because, as you would well understand, an extra 1,000 kilometres a week, in some instances, it is significant cost to an individual.
Absolutely. And the ferries, I think the Lirrit ferry's not in operation, but the Waikerie one, they moved up to the higher landing, and that's still kept cracking along, even though it sort of runs along a spine of land between the waters.
Yeah, it does. The lower landing, that went out of service, about 100,000 megalitres, and the high landing has now been installed, and that'll run to about 180,000 meg. So we might see some disruption there, early January. Of course, last night, Swan Reach and Morgan ferries had their service ceased until the river returns back to a safe level. And we'll continue to see other ferries. So I think Mannum, Penong will continue to run, Cadell will continue to run, and there'll be other ferries. Walker's Flat will cease operation very shortly, as will other ferries, because once the river gets to a level, the ferry can't latch itself to the bank, and that makes it very problematic for safety, particularly when you've got heavy vehicles and people's lives on that ferry. Now,
Nicholas Senefani, your Liberal colleague and fellow Riverlander, said Tony Sharley, one of the local water experts, had talked about maybe there should be daily flow updates. Since that conversation, has there been an improvement in the flow indications that have come from government about what's coming down the river?
Well, gee whiz, Ricky, we probably need an hour to talk about that. But look, we do need better information flow. There's no doubt about that. One thing I can say to you that there is a high level of concern that we have been using historical data for a long period of time. And if we reflect on the 1974 floods, we had 180 gigalitres of water coming across the border, and it came at a certain height, river height. What we're seeing now is that we're almost at that 74 height, but we're nowhere near the 180 gigalitres a day. So with constraints, which are things like roads and causeways and bridges, pumps, they are holding some water back, and that is increasing the height artificially, and that is giving all of the statisticians and the government agencies that monitor the river something to really think about at the moment, because what we're seeing is that we might get higher rivers with lesser flow, and that could impact on some of those levee banks, could impact on irrigation pumps, and essentially, at the end of the day, it could impact on a lot of the river communities that are relying on information that uses that historical data.
That's a great point. It puts a lot of colour in the information given at the start of the public meeting at Barmera earlier this week that whilst 1974 is a reference point about flow levels, the SES individual there said, but that doesn't mean it's going to behave the same way as it did in 74.
Yeah, that's a good call, Ricky. And, we know that a lot of things have changed. Since 1974, we've got roads in different spots. We've got road upgrades. As I said, we've got the Berry Bridge that wasn't there. We've got the Lirrup Causeway that wasn't there. We've got a significant number of pumps in the river, pump sheds, suction lines. And we've also got a lot more native vegetation that is also holding that water back. So they're just an example of what the complexities are when trying to manage the river in these high flow events.
Well, Tim Whetstone, a member for Chaffey covering the upper parts of the South Australian Murray, appreciate your time working with your local communities all the way along the river there to join us on Flow to talk about that, and hopefully we can have a safe and happy Christmas going into 2023.
Yeah, thank you, Ricky, and you and your family, please have a great Christmas and a safe one.